And there were also African victims of the evolutionist violence. The most famous one was the pygmy Otabinga, I hope I'm saying his name correctly, who was taken to the world of the white man to be displayed as a transitional form. Otabinga was caught in 1904 by researcher Samuel Werner in Congo, then a colony of Belgium. The native, whose name meant friend in his native language, was married and had 2 kids, yet he was chained, put into a cage, and sent by a boat to the evolutionist scientists who within the same year displayed him in the St. Louis World Fair with other monkey species as the closest transitional form to humankind. 2 years later, he was taken to a zoo in Bronx, New York, this time displayed as one of the ancestors of human beings, together with a few chimpanzees, a gorilla called Dinah, and an orangutan called Dohung. Dr. William T. Hornaday, I'm saying this correctly, the director of the zoo, who was also a fanatical evolutionist. I see I'm not the best reader. He delivered long speeches about how he was proud of having such a precious transitional form. The guests, on the other hand, treated Otabinga as an ordinary animal. But I think they are less likely to poke ordinary animals with sticks. But anyways, even after there were attempts to convert him into Christianity and have him fit in with American society, Ota was forevermore haunted by his time in the monkey cage. He would repeatedly slap his chest, declaring, "I am man, I am man." Otabinga eventually sunk into Great Depression and committed suicide. Now, I should look up some more. I'm going to post a link for you to read more in detail on his story, because this one is really heartbreaking. And Otabinga was not the only human put on display for evolution. Now let's further connect this to racism, going into the theory of natural selection and the idealism behind the survival of the fittest. As quoted earlier, some evolutionists held strongly the belief that if mankind had ape-like ancestors, there should still, in some part of the world, be some semi-human beings who still have not completed the evolution process, or like the lost link or whatever. And they back this up with the skulls of the Aborigines, as I've just read. German biologist and philosopher Ernest Haeckel got into the act with Darwin and others, and this is from Haeckel's 1904 book, The Wonders of Life. Wow, a totally different value to their lives. Now this reminds me of the Dred Scott Supreme Court decision of 1857. The decision ruled that people of African descent, whether or not they were slaves, could never be citizens of the United States. This was challenged because the Declaration of Independence states that all men are created equal. However, those for inequality in the promotion of slavery argued that blacks were only 3/5 human, or not a whole man. Thus, their lives are not of equal value as a white man. They are not even to be considered American humans. Or American citizens, because they're only 3/5 human. Get it? And for those who argue whether or not Darwin was a racist, consider this quote. At some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. And how convenient that just 2 years after the Dred Scott decision, Darwin's Origin of Species is published and garners more and more supporters, becoming this new Bible. And speaking of the Bible, many see the teachings of Christianity as like holding down or holding back the black race, and even as promoting racism, although I believe it's just a thing of the scriptures being twisted and original words being replaced. Because it seems to me that evolution supports racism and slavery. not Bible teachings. Despite, like I said, I just believe that scriptures and words have been twisted and replaced. But anyways, that's another argument. And before I get sidetracked, note, Ernst Haeckel, the German biologist and philosopher mentioned, he promoted and popularized Charles Darwin's work in Germany. And you want to know who else was a big fan of Darwin? Well, let's make a connection. Now, young Darwin thought up the theory of evolution and the idea of extermination of lower races or the salvage race. Ernst Haeckel, born 25 years after Darwin, faked the drawings of human embryos for evolution and then sold the idea to Germany. And that was right before this guy was born. So Haeckel ends up being the link between Darwin and Hitler through the promotion of evolution through his fake embryo drawings. Hitler used their theories on evolution and sold it to the German people to justify the extermination of over 6 million people of one race. And check out the planned hit list. Why am I not surprised at the classification in its order? Now, it's obvious that there was a need to justify racism, racial domination, and racial elimination, or as commonly used, extermination. And guess who are other fans of Darwin, as well as Hitler? Like Darwin and Hitler, both Columbine shooters made references to extermination of people, as well as references to evolution and natural selection, as if this is justification for the brutal acts of murder taking the lives of innocent fellow students. Now, one was killed merely for professing her belief in God, and another was killed merely for being black. Is there a connection to the idealism of evolution? Something to think about at least. Now, in my opinion, in following the law of evolution, you are following a law that doesn't include morals, because it's just about survival, right? Survival of the fittest, as they claim. And this can be by any means, even if it means eliminating another race. Now, you may think that this is a rare mentality in people, but this mentality is not as far-fetched as many of you may think. And the theories of evolution is used to dehumanize people so that human rights are denied, and it aids in discrimination and prejudice. It adds fuel to it. And support, if you believe that. And what can be worse is how this can affect our children. How it can cause many minorities, particularly blacks, to feel less than, or inferior, or inhuman. Imagine a child learning about evolution and seeing the ape man and how the ape men may resemble themselves, and because I know when I sat in the classroom and I watched the film, it was a girl from Africa actually sitting next to me, and they were showing us this film, this dramatization of the hominid, people in costume and all, and we just kind of looked at each other, I knew what she was thinking and she knew what I was thinking, but no words were exchanged. But I mean, imagine if children are learning this. Imagine what this is doing, and then we wonder why our children are quicker to pick the white dog. And we've seen the pictures of our president and first lady being photoshopped into monkeys. Now, this should also let us know what is really behind the theory of humans evolving from apes. Plain and simple, it is saying that other races, particularly blacks, are less evolved and not fully human, thus do not deserve to be treated as human nor given equal human rights. It also gives an image of blacks as being wild beasts or savages, something to fear and beware of. And eventually, it can also be used in an attempt to justify slavery, brutality, and genocide. And it has been used, don't forget.